It's day 51 of the Zombie Hunter build, and today I'm going to be working with Bondo. So, I have my fender flares that I need to complete, and basically what I'm doing is I'm just going to use the Bondo as filler to just smooth out any imperfections that are on the surface of the fender flares. I learned the hard way that Monstaliner pretty much is like paint, and it requires a pretty perfect surface to put it on. You know, I figured because it was textured that things didn't need to be perfect, but imperfections still show up on there. So, you know, you live and you learn. So now I'm going to make sure that my fender flares are pretty much perfectly smooth. That way, you won't see any kind of, you know, imperfections or any kind of like waviness or anything like that to the actual fender flares. So yeah, I mean, I laid short strand fiberglass on it already, sanded most of them down. Now I'm just going to put in the Bondo body filler. That's the stage 2 fill, you know, just a regular Bondo. So this is not fiberglass. Do that, smooth that out, just a skim layer, you know, and you know, sand it all down, and then spray it with 2K epoxy primer. And then once that's done and dried, I'll just scuff it up a little bit and then start, you know, loading on the Monstaliner. I may have to build some sort of something to hang the fender flares on. You know, I don't. You know, I might have to hit up the hardware store and get some. I don't know. Maybe I'll get some conduit or something and weld that up, just to build a sort of frame or something that I can put them on while I'm coating them, because I don't know how I'm gonna hang them. You know, I don't have something to hang them on or whatever. But we'll figure that out. In the meantime, I'm just gonna sand them down, lay the coatings of body filler on there, and then spray it with primer. Oh, and I had to figure out a way how I'm gonna mount it. So what I did is I went to the hardware store and I got $30 worth of stainless steel bolts, nuts, and washers. So I'm hoping that these will be good enough. I'll have to drill holes into the body, which, you know, what are you gonna do? It has to be done. So I'm gonna drill those holes into the body, and then I'm gonna put in a little bit of chassis saver around the holes, you know, to make sure that I don't get rusting, and then mount them. So what I'll probably do is drill the holes into the actual flares first, and because you got to get up, like it's hard to get into there. Well, you'll see once I try to mock them up, but it's hard to get up in there. So I'll do that, and then probably use a little marker just to mark the holes where they are on the body. Remove everything, drill the holes, coat it with chassis saver, and then attach everything. So, all right, time to get to work. Okay, so now what I have to do is I have to drill the holes in the fender flares. I marked where they need to be. I'm going to drill the holes in there, and then I'm going to, this is so the bolts, stainless steel bolts, can go through. Then I'm going to align it on the truck where it needs to go. Then I'm going to mark with a marker where the holes need to be placed. Then I'm going to drill into the sheet metal of the truck, coat the inside of that with chassis saver, which is the same as Por 15 or any of those other products to prevent rust. Let that cure, and then I can bolt the fender flares on. But again, I'm going to have to sand these down and prime them, and then roll them with Monstaliner. But I'm going to get all the holes lined up and make sure everything's where it needs to be. If I need to add a little bit of filler to the insides or wherever, where the body might be warped a little bit or not exactly flush, I'll do that. And just minimal. It doesn't need to be exact. Nothing on the truck is exact, and that's just the way G-wagons are. So there's little gaps and things in different areas of the truck. So so let me start drilling these holes and get it kind of lined up and figure out where I'm gonna place my holes in the sheet metal. Alright, so I'm using a, what's this, a 3/16, I think? And let's see if that works. Ooh, that's tight. Alright, so I may have to make these a little bit bigger, because once I add the chassis saver and the paint and everything, it might not fit. I'll just make it slightly larger just by moving it around, and I'll do that with the sheet metal as well. I don't want to go too big, because then it'll leave too much of a gap. Alright, so here's the fender flare mocked up. Alright, so now what I have to do is I have to mark all the little holes inside here that will be used to drill into the fender itself. So as you can see, I got, there, and it goes on. So I'm going to mark those little holes in there, and then take the drill the holes that I need in the sheet metal, make sure everything lines up. I'll probably put some bolts in there, tighten it up, and just to see how it fits. Then I can see if I need to add a little bit of filler here or there before I sand it all down and prime it. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a pilot hole with a smaller bit first, and then I'll use the larger one. I don't want to screw this up. And then, we'll do a mock-up and see how well the fender lines up with the actual, or the fender flare lines up with the actual fender. Alright, so I coated all my holes with chassis saver, which is rust preventative. It's a epoxy that is very similar to basically it's the same thing as Pour 15. Alright, so it's just a different name. So I use that on all raw steel. So that is good for like coating frames and tubs and things like that before you paint it. So I will be using that as well on this bad boy once that project starts. But good product. Now what I need to do is I need to block sand all the flares. All right, so I'm gonna block sand them, get them down scuffed up, and just clean them off and make sure everything's even. And then I'm going to spray them with 2K epoxy primer. And the reason I have to use 2K epoxy primer is because Monstaliner sticks better to that. And this stuff's expensive, man. I forgot how much it was, but it was like almost 20 bucks a can just for that, which seems like a big waste for 4 fender flares. But once I mix this together, the pot life isn't very long. So you have to push this little button in, and then that mixes it in. You shake it up, and it's 2-part. All right, so I'll have to do that. I'll spray these all down, and then I'll let that dry, and then it'll be coating it with Monstaliner, and I'll just roll that on. I had decent results with rolling, and I haven't noticed too much of a difference when people who spray it. They still have the imperfections anyway, so I'll just do it that way. Alright, so you see as I was sanding, this little hole appeared. So that's a problem. You get air pockets sometimes when you're doing the fiberglass, and you don't realize it until you actually open one up. So I'll have to fill that in with body filler and then resand this little section. Extra work, but it's going to be worth it in the end when it's done right. And this one was from the factory, another little hole opened up. Alright, so the flares are all finished, all sanded down. Now it's time to spray them. Alright, so I'm going to spray them with primer. Before I do that, I gotta build some sort of contraption that's gonna hold them in place. So the best I could think of is to keep recycling this thing. This pallet has been extra handy, but I also had some furniture delivered, and I have these little wood strips. So what I plan to do is cut them to fit here, and then I'm just gonna screw them into the pallet, and then hang the fenders from here, maybe bolt them into the, into here. So that's the plan. We'll see how it works, but essentially I just need something to get them elevated, and so I can get 360 around them, and then also nothing that's going to inhibit any kind of spray or rolling. So, and I can also kind of move them around down there if I really need to, but I'll try to bolt them on just so that they're extra secure. So, but they turned out good. Once it's all sprayed and then rolled, you'll never know that they were modified in any way. So then it's a matter of just bolting them to the truck. So good, let's get to work. Alright, so I got these bolted in place. Now all I have to do is screw them to this, and I'll just do that for all 4 of them, and then they'll be sturdy enough that I can actually just work on them, paint them, and have everything looking good pretty soon. Okay, so now I have these things all mounted where they need to be. Got a little bit of space between all of them. This is gonna be a little tight, but that's okay. And now I have to wash it. I'm gonna wash it with trisodium phosphate, get it nice and clean. Then I'll go over it with water, just plain water, let that dry, and then I'll start spraying the primer on there. And again, I'm going to be using that 2K Eastwood 2K epoxy primer. So, alright, so it's a gray finish. I'll go over the insides, the outsides, get it all done, and then hopefully I'll roll it with the Monstaliner today. I don't know if I'm going to have time, but regardless, they're going to be primed and ready for Monstaliner. And then I could just move this whole entire contraption into the garage. I'll make room, and then you know, I could even roll it in the garage then. I'm just spraying this on the outside because I was worried about overspray. The fact that I'm going to be rolling it, I don't have to worry about overspray. So I'll spray it with the epoxy primer, and then hopefully today, maybe tonight, or possibly tomorrow, we'll see. I'll you know, do all the work for the Monstaliner. All right, so let's get cracking. Alright, so now it's time to put the primer down. So it's 2 parts because it's 2K epoxy primer. So there's 2 chambers actually inside this can. So there's the actual spray, and then there's an activator inside it as well. So what happens is I'll have to take this off and push this little valve in, and that'll open up the other little chamber inside there that has the activator. So that'll activate the paint, and it should have a pot life of about 48 hours. I'm anticipating spraying this today, and then possibly doing a little bit on my rocker panel. You know, I don't know, we'll see. But at least for today, I'll have this sprayed down because I hate to waste it. You know, I'm not going to use too much. I'll do maybe I'll do 3 coats. I don't know, 2 or 3 coats. But there's still going to be a whole bunch left, and this was like, I don't know, I want to say like 25 bucks or something like that. So it's expensive stuff. That's why I didn't use it for the rest of the truck, though I probably should have. But that would have increased my overhead, you know, my cost on the project, because you know, I try to stay within a budget. Okay, so now you have to take this off, push this like this. There's a little hole it fits in. All right, and then there we go. Alright, and now shake it up some more. Alright, now I gotta shake this for another 2 minutes. Make sure everything is distributed evenly inside there. That's it. Thought it was gonna last a lot more, but one can was barely enough to cover these fenders. Hopefully the Monstaliner sticks to this, because if it doesn't, then we're in trouble. Okay, so my fender flares are now covered in primer. I was actually surprised with how much primer I went through. I thought I was like, four fender flares, one can should be enough. Not a chance. All right, so I went through the entire can, and then I missed a couple spots. So then I had to use just 1K, like high build primer that you can just buy at the hardware store. So I use a little bit of that in certain spots. So here's what they look like. It ended up pretty good. I could see where there were spots that I, little imperfections and things. Once you put the primer on there, you can see what you're missing. So I sanded down a little bit more and filled in a little bit more. But that's as good as it's going to get. I'm tired of working on these things. So now I have, I think it's like 1 quart or something, or whatever amount of Monstaliner I have. I'm worried that it's not going to be enough to coat the fender flares inside and out. So to kind of remedy that situation, I'm going to, where is it? I'm going to spray the insides of my fender flares. Okay, you're not really gonna see those, but I don't want them to be primer colored, and I didn't want to do them black because there's certain areas that you'll see as the vehicle sits. You know, you can see the inside a little bit. So, so at least underneath the fender flare. So I went and bought Rust-Oleum 2K primer and paint. And so this is called Oregano, and it's very close to Commando Green, which is the Jeep color that Monstaliner used to make their sans panties. So all these colors are very, very, very close. I believe the Commando Green Jeep color and sans panties are the exact same match. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they are. This is very close to it. It's a little bit lighter, but it's close enough. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the insides of my fenders or fender flares, all the interior parts. So we're talking about, see, like this part will peak if you're not, you know, if you're just seeing it attached to the vehicle. You know, certain areas you might see that. So I'm gonna paint all inside here, inside the lip, the rear of it. I'm gonna paint all that, and the only stuff I'm gonna coat with the Monstaliner is I'll do just the tops, you know, the sides and underneath this little section right here. I think that I just want to err on the side of caution and not run out of Monstaliner midway through the project. So I'll do that, and hopefully, you know, I'll have an idea of what it's going to kind of look like, and then I'll, you know, I could just paint them and put them on the truck as it sits. But since the rest of the vehicle is coated in Monstaliner, I think it's only appropriate that everything matches, you know, so it has that texture finish as well. So yeah, I'll get to work on that, spray the undersides, and hopefully roll them tonight. Okay, so the flares are essentially ready for paint. I'm still going to go over them and scuff them up, wash them. I'll wash them with trisodium phosphate, and then what I'll do is I'll go over everything with mech. And once I, you know, go over it quickly with mech, that'll get rid of any oils, any grease, any kind of fingerprints or anything that I might have put on there from touching it. All right. Then I'll start rolling it. So here's what the quart size kits look like. All right, so it comes in a little bucket. This was not included, but you can order that from Monstaliner, the brown 3M scuff pad. So I got that just to give a, you know, go over everything with that. So it has a nice rough texture to adhere to. I also ordered 2 sets of these. And the reason I did that is when I rolled I knew prior to rolling the exterior of the truck that as you roll, it starts to get a little bit more tacky, you know, as it starts to set. And then what ends up happening is it starts pulling the material off of these rollers, right? So whatever this material is, these little plastic things. So they end up getting stuck inside the actual Monstaliner on the vehicle, and you get these sharp little, you know, points on the vehicle. So you have to pull those out before that happens. So to prevent that from happening, what you do is you have to keep changing your rollers often. This is only 4 fenders, So what I'm gonna do is do the first 2 fender flares with these, the next 2 with these, and that'll probably prevent that from deteriorating. And then when I do my second coat, I'll repeat that with these. All right, so here's the actual Monstaliner. So this is the actual color, all right? So that's the tint. This is the catalyst, so this gets the whole process going. So you gotta make sure you put that in there, and then it starts to set. And then here's the actual material, and that's just the urethane material. So this is a tintable one, so I guess it's probably clear or white or something. And then, so what I have to do is add this to this, pour that in here, pour that in here, mix it all up, and pour it back into this container, and then I can begin rolling it onto the vehicle, or in this case onto the fender flares. And you can see my fender flares, I did that oregano Rust-Oleum on the insides of them and the undersides of them, because I don't know how much that's gonna coat. I would imagine that it would have no problem coating the top sides and undersides of the fender flares, but you never know, and I don't want to be halfway through and then realize that I need to get more, right? Or I'm running out. So I'll just do the tops and, you know, the undersides of this part here, maybe the exposed areas there, you know, with it. And I'm not gonna worry about doing any of the other stuff. If I have some extra, maybe I'll do a single coat, you know, just to make sure it doesn't peel or whatever. But I think that's the best approach. Okay, so time to get to work and start sanding all this down, then wash it, and then coat it with mech, and then begin rolling it. All right, so I have to coat everything with this. I'm just gonna wipe it all down with mech. It's pretty hazardous stuff. This one isn't. This is a substitute though. I don't know. I usually get the regular one at Home Depot, but now they don't have it anymore. So this is the only one they had. So it's, I don't know, it's a mech substitute. So we'll see. Maybe it's not as toxic or something. I don't know. We'll try it though. So I'm just gonna put a little bit on a little towel and wipe everything down, make sure there's no grease. Everything's sanded down, everything's washed, and so this will be the final coat or final stage of prep before I actually start rolling the fender flares. what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's inside this bucket here to get all the inside areas, like in the little corners and things like that, that might be visible if you look hard enough. So, you know, just a light coating, just so I can make sure that I use as much of the product as I can. You know, I don't want to waste any of it. All right, so here is the first coat completed and about 2 hours of dry time. I ran out of battery when in the middle of rolling it, but this is the end product. It's almost perfect, you know, like I could almost get away with leaving it as is and not doing another coat, but then there's little holes, like pinholes, of where the Monstaliner didn't cover, you know. So this one has probably the most. I don't know if you can see that. See those? So I need to go over it again to make sure that those are all covered, because that looks kind of crappy. But overall, I think it turned out really nice. You know, I was a little bit more careful with it now than I was when I rolled the majority of the truck. And I think that's partly because I'm more familiar with it, but also partly because I was rushing with the other one, because the stuff was drying. It was in the high humidity and it was drying as I was rolling it, you know. So and I had a lot more surface area to cover. So probably about, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes or so, I think I'm going to start rolling the final coat on this thing. You know, because this, I don't know, I don't even know if this is still good. Feels like it's okay still, but it might be getting thick. So, yeah, looks good. And here we have the finished product. All right, so it's dry, but it's you know, I couldn't go wheeling with it right now. You know, if it gets scraped, it's still soft. So I needed like a full week would make it, you know, extremely hard. But there was like this spot I noticed that I missed. So you see that? So what I'm gonna do, this stuff is trash now, so I can't even bother with that. But what I may do is just use a little needle or something and just fill in with oregano Rust-Oleum, you know, oregano color Rust-Oleum, and just any little imperfection, I'll just fill that in by hand. It'll be time consuming, but you know, it'll be worth it just to, but I mean, everything else looks perfect. That was the only screw up, I think. Oh, looks like a little bit's missing here too. You know, it's hard to see when you're doing it, even though I had pretty good lighting in here. It's kind of difficult to see, but overall it's great. And it may just look like I, you know, rubbed it on something, you know, but you can see here too. So I'll go over these again with, like I said, the Rust-Oleum, just to fill it in. I probably should have primed the whole thing. See, too bad I didn't have the epoxy primer in that color, you know, like the 2K one, but whatever. Overall, it looks great. All right, now I just have to mount them to the truck, and I'll use those stainless hardware to do that, get them on there. All right, now I just need to tighten these things up, but man, looking good. Oh, that looks so good.